Happy holidays, everybody. Welcome back into the vault. 'Tis the season, so today I'm going to talk about gifts. It's the season of giving gifts, and I don't think this was a Christmas gift of mine, but it was definitely one of the most influential gifts I've ever received in my life, and that is this guy right here. This is the Atari 2600 Junior, and this was my very first video game system. If memory serves me right, my parents bought it for me at KB Toys. I believe they paid about $60 for it. I do not have the original box, although I have since acquired a new box for the Atari 2600 Junior. It had that cool red box with a handle on it. It was very neat. But this guy, this was it. This was my console. It originally came with a thin plastic film over this, which I slowly picked that over the years, then eventually peeled off. You've got your select and reset buttons. You've got toggle switch between color and black and white, because that's the way it used to be. Color TVs were a thing back then. And you've got your on and off switch. Yay, it turns it on and off. You got your difficulty switches, because that's kind of the way this worked back then, is you could do all these different variations of the games by changing between difficulty switches on player 1 and player 2. You could give individual handicaps, and you would press the reset button to start your games because, well, in case you didn't know, this was the controller. This is all there is to it. This was the first video game controller I ever held. One button and this wonderful sound. The sound of the rubber moving around in this joystick. Oddly enough, these plug into a Sega Genesis. Better so, the Sega Genesis controllers can plug into an Atari 2600 and make games a lot easier to play. Where do I even start with this thing? I mean, it's an Atari. I'm sure you've all seen Ataris before. I don't know if you've actually seen this specific version. It's the 2600 Junior. There was another model, the 2600 Junior, that had, I believe, the words 2600 written up here. In case you can't really tell, this is embossed in metal, the Atari logo here. And you got the cool rainbow going across the front. I have no idea what caused this dent, but it's been there as long as I can remember. This still works. I have this in my house right now because my son, let's see, he's a little more than 2, and I'm not really like introducing him to games proper, but he's starting to like really be interested in this kind of stuff. And this is where I want him to start, because this is where I started. We're going to start with Space Invaders. We're going to appreciate the classics going forward, because this was where it truly began. Video game history lineage goes back way farther than the Atari 2600, obviously, but this was where gaming really began. This was where it blew up, was on the 2600 as far as home video games, bringing the arcade experience home with great hits like Pac-Man. Which was terrible for the system, but I loved it when I was a kid. I loved E.T. when I was a kid. I loved Atari games so much when I was a kid, and I still love them today. And starting on something like this, I think, is important. Because if you appreciate your past, then the evolution of games becomes so much more interesting. Moving on to NES, and Sega Genesis, and TurboGrafx, Super Nintendo, N64, GameCube, PlayStation, Wii, Xbox, yada yada yada, so and so forth. But this guy right here, this was where it started for me. And if you know me, I am a lunatic when it comes to games, and it's all because of the Atari. It's all because of the Atari 2600. So, Mom and Dad, thank you for buying this for me. Thank you for starting my lifelong obsession, and happy holidays to everyone. Thanks for visiting In the Vault, which is a new one. Into the Vault is the name of the show. Thanks for watching. See you next time.